All right, so let's look under the hood of this program to calculate chi-squared. So here we have a function that takes in the expected and observed values and it calculates chi-squared. It stores in a variable the observed minus expected, which is represented by O and E. When it says math.pow, that pretty much means like it's the power of whatever is over here. So like observed minus expected raised to the power of 2. So yeah, observed minus expected squared, and then divided by expected. So that's stored into the variable chi, and so it just returns or gives an output of that value. So this chi-squared function, when you input E and O, gives you the chi-squared value. Um, in this part, essentially just what does this part do? It takes it basically uses it allows us to get input from the user and then put it into the chi-squared. So you see here it says chi-squared E comma O, which is just this one up here. The same thing. We're just using it again, but in here we're actually doing it with user input. So that's just the original. Over here is just the original function, and over here it's actually being used. So then let's go over to this part of the intro. That's just the text that you can see towards the beginning, telling you like what's going on in this program. And then last but not least, we have the main method, which basically just like does all the real work. Just takes information from what things we've built up here and uses it down here. And so here we get the intro, which I said before was just the text, like talking about what the program does. Then we ask the user, how many categories are there? Uh, then we take whatever they type in and we store it in a variable. And so then from that, we know how many times to ask them for observed and expected. And then we ask them, enter an observed and expected value per each line. And so this is just it takes how many times like the n that we stored for how many categories there are, and it uses that to like know how many times to ask them. It like loops the question over and over again, depending on how many times they asked. Um, and then last but not least, for actual like chi-squared, we use the math function we made up here, and we use that to calculate chi-squared based on the user input and based on the other chi-squared function up there. And then we store that in a variable called sum, which we made up here. It's originally 0, but then with this loop, every time they give us an observed and expected value, it makes it larger and larger until we have like the actual chi-squared. And then it tells the user chi-squared is whatever the sum is for this set of data. Yeah,